Hey guys, Scott Brown P1 again, and I'm back. I'm finally making videos again, and this time I'm doing an album ranking inspired by my brother's album rankings that I've been seeing online lately. We're doing Daft Punk, an famous electronic duo from France, and who's been disbanded since 2021. And they've been a huge part of my life because they were introduced they introduced me to electronic music in a way, along with some others. And their album Random Access Memories was very special to me during that time and during my high school years. Or I think it was middle school, late middle school to early high school. And then I also heard the Tron Legacy soundtrack before then, but I saw the movie Tron Legacy. And Random Access Memories was the album that came after that, and I was a huge fan ever since. And their albums ranged from 1997 to now were all good. They're all good albums. That's one disclaimer I want to give right away, is that all their albums are really good, although there are some that I like more than others. So, in order to get started, let's start with their 2005 album, Human After All. Now, most people always put this at the bottom, but I'm putting this at the bottom just because it's their weakest, but to be honest, this is actually their most underrated album to me. And this is the album that actually introduced me to many different great songs like Robot Rock, Technologic, the title track which opens the album, and Prime Time of Your Life, and Make Love, which is one that I've gotten back into recently after hearing it for the 20th anniversary last year. And this album was very interesting because it's a more darker sound. It's a lot more heavier and a lot more robotic in a way. And it just sounds a lot more like Daft Punk, you know? And this is the one I always go back to because of the songs like Robot Rock and Technologic, which are just absolute classics on the album. But most people say that this is their weakest album just because the songs were not that good and they go on for a little bit too long. In some ways, I agree, but the songs are repetitive because that's what Daft Punk always has done. They do repetitive rhythms and like catchy melodies, and that's what they're masters at. And they're also absolute masters at sampling. And this one only has one sample, and it's on Robot Rock with the drum roll at the beginning. And I feel like I could be mistaken for another one that they might have used, but yeah, overall, Human After All is just such an underrated, very overlooked album in their discography, and I'm putting it at the bottom just because I don't go back to the whole album as often, but it's still lots of great songs that you need to hear. So I'm just keeping Human After All here, but just keep in mind this is still a really solid album. Now, moving on to the next album, we're starting with their debut, 1997's Homework. Now, this is one of those albums that just like made electronic music back in the late 90s. Like, this was the French house debut from them that absolutely blew everyone's minds. And yes, it may have some repetitive melodies here and there on certain songs, but there are some absolute classics on this album. Like, you got Defunk, Around the World, which is a huge fan favorite, and Revolution 909, Burnin', and Teachers, Rock and Roll, Rollin' and Scratchin', which are the last two I just mentioned are much more noisier and a lot more experimental, but they're still really interesting tracks to listen to, as a matter of fact. But the reason I'm putting it this low is that, again, I don't really go back to it that often, but I did listen to it recently, and I still think that this album is just really, really good. Like, in terms of a debut, this is a phenomenal debut for an electronic group. And this is before they had their robotic personas and their like Interstellar 4-5 like anime videos that they did for that album. This album is just really special for the late 90s electronic scene, and especially when it comes to French house, which is what I love most about this album, is that it started the French house movement. And this is a classic album for a reason, and I think everyone should hear it at least once. So, Homework is in this spot. This is going to be a very surprising addition for the list because this is a live album. And usually, not many people would count the live albums or the soundtrack and stuff like that, but for this spot, I'm going with a live 2007 because this is a live album that absolutely blew me away. Back when this came out, it was just like monumental for live electronic dance music. And this was just after Human After All came out, but this made the haters of Human After All just completely forget how much they hated Human After All, and they just blasted it up to oblivion with all the mashups that they do. All the different songs that they mash up together are just so well done and very well constructed. Heck, it even won them a Grammy for the one with Around the World and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger mixed together. That's how special this album is to a lot of people. And even for a live album, it's long, but it's very well done, very well constructed. And I just had to give it a spot just for that reason, because of how monumental its legacy was and how much I enjoyed the album as a whole. And this really shows their stage presence whenever you see the pyramid on their stage with the LED lights and stuff. One of my favorite mashups they did was Defunk mixed with Daft and Direct from Homework. The live version of Defunk from this album is like one of my favorite live performances ever. And I love Around the World and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger mixed together. And I loved the Technologic remix that they do in this one. And they start it with Robot Rock and Oh Yeah from Homework. And when you hear those songs together, you're like, wow, this is really fascinating how they managed to do that. And that's the whole reason why this is here, because it's a live album that absolutely blew me away, and I just had to include it here. So next, I'm going to have to go with the Tron Legacy soundtrack. One of my absolute favorite movie scores of all time was this soundtrack. I remember listening to the full soundtrack soon after I saw the movie, or at least years after I watched it again. And like, the score for this movie is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And I wish more people would give this movie some more credit for that, because the whole movie's fantastic. I actually think Tron Legacy is a criminally underrated movie. But the soundtrack, almost everyone can agree, is like the best thing about this movie. The score and the way they mix it with electronic sounds and stuff like that, it fits the Tron universe incredibly well. And I had to give it a spot here on this list. It's pretty high on the list because how much it just really connects with me. As a Tron fan and as a fan of Daft Punk, it was just like really mixed in together. And Tron Legacy was also my introduction to the Tron franchise. And this is a very special soundtrack for me, and I will never forget hearing this score for the first time in the ending theme in the end credits, and I was blown away by how this music sounded. And I'm like, who is this? So that's when I became a fan of Daft Punk, was through this soundtrack. But the next two albums, they could flop between which ones I like more, because this spot right here is one that grew on me so much that I'm like, this could be number one at any point. But at number 2 today, I'm giving it to Discovery. Now, to be honest, to be absolutely perfectly honest, I liked this album when I first heard it. I really did. I really liked this album when I first heard it. It's just the first half of this album are all bangers, all classics. And the deep cuts, they were good, but I didn't really connect with them as much as I did with the first half of the album. But as the years went by, as years and years go by, and after hearing it again this year for its 25th anniversary, this album is special, because it really got people into electronic music, like back in the 2000s. But it also just opened the door for many other electronic artists to fully become who they become. And it also spawned a whole movie around it, and the movie's fantastic. I'm gonna do a review of that at some point, but yeah, this Discovery is a phenomenal electronic album. It's probably the best electronic album in my opinion, although Crossed by Justice is very, very close. So, Discovery lands at number 2 today because I just I love the next album so much. This next album, to me, is a masterpiece. Every song is perfect, and every song I can go back and listen to, even though I can listen to the whole album and never get tired of it. So, number 1 on my list, my personal opinion, is Random Access Memories from 2013. Get Lucky was everywhere. Like, that song was everywhere, and I knew you could not escape it. And for me, that was my true introduction to Daft Punk's actual, like, songs, was Get Lucky. Even though I first heard their name through the Tron Legacy soundtrack. But when I heard this album for the first time, and I heard the whole thing, this album blew me away. Like, I could not think of a bad thing to say about it when I first heard it. Like, it was a mind-blowing experience that I will never forget. Give Life Back to Music, The Game of Love, Within, Giorgio by Moroder, which is a great tribute to that legend, Instant Crush, Get Lucky, as I've mentioned before, and my favorite Daft Punk song is on this album, Doing It Right, featuring Noah Lennox from Animal Collective. And I will never get tired of that song, no matter how many times I've heard it. And it ends with probably their best closing track, in my opinion. Way more than Too Long, way more than any of the songs from Homework, which is Contact. I know Touch gets a lot of love for being the best long song of the album, and Touch is a fantastic song. But Contact was a perfect ending to this album. Even though it ends on a very weird note with the record scratching and it's like it's distorted and it just breaks apart. But to me, that just makes it feel like, now that they're disbanded, it feels like this was their last hurrah and this is their last album together. And it won them a ton of Grammys, and it totally deserved Best Album of that year. And 2013 was a beautiful, amazing year for music, but nothing will top Random Access Memories for me for that year. So, Daft Punk, thank you for the great music you have given us. And I really hope that someday we will get a live tour at some point in the future. They're still active on social media and like doing anniversaries for their albums. Like Random Access Memories had a 10th anniversary edition, which was great. But you know, if you guys have not heard any of these albums, I highly, highly recommend starting with either Discovery or Random Access Memories, because they're both phenomenal masterpiece albums, but with two different sounds. Random Access Memories had a more disco 70s sound that celebrated all kinds of music, while Discovery is a better introduction to their electronic sound with samples and a lot more dancey, groovy songs. So, thank you, Daft Punk, for all this amazing music you have given us once again. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next video.